Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our second Lunch and Learn. I'm a few minutes late. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better next time. All right, so I actually polled my audience on Instagram yesterday to decide what topic I was going to discuss today, and the overwhelming majority chose um, mistakes that I see people make around when they implement fasting. So that's what we're going to chat about today. And hopefully, you will find this little lunch and learn useful. Just a heads up, I will be here on Facebook Live every Wednesday at noon Eastern for a lunch and learn. So you guys can grab a seat, you can eat your lunch, and get your learn on every Wednesday. So mark your calendars for that. There will be many fun and educational topics regarding your health and wellness coming every Wednesday. So before we get started, I wanted to just briefly introduce myself for those of you who are new to following me. My name's Loren. I am a certified faster way to fat loss coach. I have a degree in nutrition, and it is my passion to help moms get well, stay well, and prevent disease. I want to teach you guys, educate you, and empower you all to make sustainable lifestyle changes that will not only benefit you, but also your growing families. So hopefully you guys are interested in fasting. I'm sure you guys have heard of the topic fasting. It is a hot buzzword today, but it's really not a new concept. Everybody's doing it now, right? So, in fact, I would love for you guys to comment below if you are watching and let me know. Have you tried some form of fasting? Do you fast now? And what do you think about it? I would love to know what your thoughts are in regards to fasting. And what types of fasting you guys have dabbled in. If you love it, you hate it, give me all that good stuff in the comments below. Fasting, it has a multitude of health benefits, but unfortunately, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of go wrong when you're fasting, and actually cause the fasting to work against you, work against the goals that you are trying to achieve. So my purpose today is to teach you a little bit about what fasting is. We'll talk a little bit about that, what the benefits of intermittent fasting are, why you should be fasting, or who it's for, and really dive into some of the biggest mistakes I see people making when they implement intermittent fasting without a clear plan and a guide and direction and purpose. Okay, so first of all, what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting has been around, like I said, for a long time, but it's so popular right now. And a lot of people think, well, you just don't eat. That's not the case at all. Intermittent fasting is not a diet. It's not that you don't eat. It's simply an eating schedule. So what we hope to accomplish through intermittent fasting is that our bodies are at digestive rest for a longer period of time versus always being in what we call a fed state, meaning that your body is digesting food. So when we implement this strategy, you have longer periods of fasting, longer periods of digestive rest, and a shorter eating window. There's a lot of different fasting protocols out there. There's 12 and 12, there's 14 and 6, there's 16 and 8, there's a 20 and 4, there's an every other day. The most common form of intermittent fasting and the one that we encourage in the faster way for the general population is the 16 and 8 protocol. So you eat all of your meals within an 8-hour feeding window or eating window, and then we spend 16 hours a day in a fasted state. So most people will generally decide to skip breakfast and eat their first meal around noon and consume all of their food within an 8-hour window. Keep in mind, this is not a one-size-fits-all. Some people might need to stick with a 12 and 12 or a 14 and 6 window based on their specific needs or goals. Whether you are pregnant, nursing, if you have hypothyroidism, if you are a diabetic, any of those things may require a little bit different fasting protocol. So keep that in mind. And of course, as always, whenever you begin something new and you have a particular health condition, I would love for you guys to always consult your doctor before you begin something like fasting. But for the general population, we usually stick with the 16 and 8 intermittent fasting protocol. That's kind of the most popular one. So if you are joining me live, I just want to ask the question, re-ask the question. Have you ever fasted? I'm pulling it up on my phone to see if anyone has commented, because right now I don't see any, but sometimes, okay. Sometimes my comments don't show up on my computer. So anyways, comment below if you're watching and you have implemented some sort of fasting protocol and what you've thought about it. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What were your thoughts? Do you fast now? How long have you been fasting? Tell me all of the stuff. So benefits of intermittent fasting. Oh my goodness, there are so many. But here's a couple. Increased energy, mental clarity. If you guys have brain fog, this will help. Reduced cravings, better sleep, better digestion. And here's one thing that a lot of my clients report whenever they have learned how to implement this strategy. They learn how to eat to live rather than live to eat. Okay, we're constantly, we live in a society which is great, but we're constantly planning and revolving our lives around food. A lot of the things that we go and we do, events and social gatherings, are revolved around food, which is great, but we live to eat rather than eat to survive, right, in most cases. So what you learn through fasting is how to rely more on hunger cues and eat when you're actually hungry rather than just eating because you think you're supposed to wake up and eat. So there's a big difference between, eating to fuel your body and eating when you're actually hungry, as opposed to just because you think it's the right thing to do. Intermittent fasting helps to decrease insulin, paired with an increase in human growth hormone, which basically is what facilitates fat burning. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But it also helps to increase insulin sensitivity, which is really beneficial for people who have type 2 diabetes. It helps to lower your risk. And it also helps if you have type 2 diabetes. While you're at digestive rest, you also are allowing your body to heal itself from the inside out, meaning that you can actually regenerate and repair cells. The damaged ones are kicked out, new ones are allowed to regenerate, and then it also helps to boost your immune system. And then, of course, what everybody hopes for it helps to help you become leaner and accelerate fat loss. So you have a shorter eating window, right? So most of the time, you're most likely going to consume less in general. So what fasting does is it helps our bodies to shift from being a sugar burner to becoming a fat burner. Instead of burning glycogen, which is carbohydrates, which converts to glycogen stored in our muscles, you are able to, instead of tapping into that constantly for fuel, which is the preferred energy source of the body, we can now burn through that and tap into our triglycerides, which is fat, for fuel. So most people come to the Faster Way, come to me after years of eating 6 small meals a day. I did it too. I thought breakfast was the most important meal of the day. And, you've been taught by the wellness industry, the fitness industry. You've been taught by big box companies, cereal commercials, marketing, that you need to eat breakfast. You need to eat 6 small meals a day to rev up your metabolism. And in fact, there's not any real evidence or research out there that supports that concept. So we actually actually are able to optimize or maximize your metabolism and accelerate fat loss through the strategy of intermittent fasting when it's done correctly. So instead of burning glucose and glycogen, which is your preferred energy source, that's your body's preferred source of fuel whenever you're in motion, instead we wait long enough for our bodies to really digest that last meal, burn through those glycogen stores, and then you can tap into your fat stores, which if you are eating constantly every couple of hours, your body never gets the chance to do that. Also, when you are constantly in this fed state where you're digesting food, your body's storage and your fat storing hormone, insulin, is high, and that's what prevents your body from using fat for energy. Instead, it actually stores it. So in a fasted state, your insulin is low, and then you can use that fat, burn it for energy instead of storing it. So that's why fasting is so wonderful. Now, yes, fasting is amazing, but you also have to take into consideration that too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And whenever you just, go into something without proper research and, just the mailman. Okay, without proper research and really knowing what you're getting into and the reason why you're doing it and having a purpose and a plan and all of that, you can get into trouble, and actually it can have negative effects. This is not to scare you, but it's just simply to educate you that there is a right and a wrong way to do this fasting, and with most things, there's a right and a wrong way, right? So here's the biggest mistakes I see people making when they implement some sort of fasting protocol. Number one, they just do it, okay? They think, oh, well, so-and-so's fasting, I'm going to try it. Well, did you do any research? Did you actually research the kind of fasting, the protocol that maybe you specifically should be using? Instead of really understanding why you've chosen a particular type of fasting, you just dive into it because that's what Sally's doing. That's what everybody at work's doing, and you have no real education to back that up before you're trying it. So we want to take advantage of the benefits of intermittent fasting while not risking hormonal or metabolic problems. Okay, that's the key. So again, there's the 12 and 12 protocol, 16 and 8, which is most common. There's a 20 and 4, which might work well for guys, but I would not recommend that for women. And then there's the 24-hour fast every other day, which I absolutely don't recommend for women. And this is the problem. You just pick one of those with not really researching the reason behind why you're doing what you're doing. So I want you to research and educate yourself before trying anything, right? But some of these can be just too extreme for especially us women. We could compromise our hormones and compromise our metabolism by fasting too long, too often, too much. So, too extreme or too hard, too fast. Okay, here's a problem with fasting and a lot of reason why some people just try it and they give up too quickly. Going from eating every 2 hours to fasting for 16 hours of the day can be very difficult. So instead of just like going gung-ho, cold turkey, going to the 16 and 8 intermittent fasting protocol, it's better to actually ease your way into it with a slower transition so it's not as hard on you and you're more likely to stick with it. Now, the other thing in regards to just doing the fasting and not necessarily having the reasoning behind it or educating yourself on how to do it right is that I see this all the time. You start out fasting and it's so easy to just not eat, right? You realize that you're like, oh, well, I don't need to eat. And actually, it's way easier to not have to think about what I'm going to eat. So I'm just going to keep fasting and I'm going to fast longer and longer. And you stretch out your fasting window every day. You end up fasting 18, 20 hours a day. And it's just not necessary. It's not necessary to put that added stress on your body, because fasting is a stressor, and it's nearly impossible to get enough to eat in a very short eating window, especially like a 4-hour eating window. It's almost impossible to eat enough food. So too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, is what is my point there. So, sticking with 16 hours instead of like overdoing it, is the key there. Okay, another thing I see is not staying hydrated. People are not, they're fasting, but they're not drinking enough water, and they're still drinking tons of sodas, and they're still consuming a lot of artificial sweeteners or alcohol, those kinds of things. So I recommend that you drink a glass of water right when you wake up, because you have fasted and you're not consuming foods. So we want to make sure that we stay hydrated and drink enough water, especially during our eating or our fasting window. Electrolyte water can be extremely beneficial if you are fasting. And just in general, I love to drink electrolyte water. It helps to ensure that your body is able to retain that hydration, and it provides the minerals that your body and your hormones need to be balanced. So electrolyte water is great. Speaking of liquids, paying attention to what you're consuming during your fasting window. Are you breaking your fast and you don't even know it? So artificial sweeteners could be one thing that is potentially breaking your fast. How much creamer you're using. Are you over that 40 to 50 calorie threshold? Are you using something that has sugar in it during your fasting window? All of those things could potentially initiate that insulin response, which is what stops fat burning and actually causes your body to start storing fat. So that's what we want to try to avoid when we are fasting. Unfortunately, there's a lot of controversy around what could or could not, or what does or what does not break your fast. But the only way to really truly know is to actually test your blood sugar after you have consumed something during your fasting window. So best case scenario, best rule of thumb is to stick with water. Unsweetened teas, herbal teas are great, that kind of thing. Black coffee as well. Okay, another mistake I see people make is they don't eat enough during their eating window, or exact opposite, they're overeating during their eating window. So the difference between choosing to eat within a certain eating window as opposed to just not eating, that's the problem. People just over rely on fasting and don't really put emphasis on what they're eating, how much they're eating during their eating window. So really, you need to be eating until you are satiated, eating until you are full during your eating window. If you don't eat enough, you're never going to be able to turn off that hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin. So you're just going to be hangry all the time. Your body's never going to get enough food during your eating window. So you're going to be hangry during your fasting period, which is going to make it extremely difficult to sustain this long term. And also, you're just not getting the nutrients that your body needs, which also leads to that binging and restricting, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. We want you to find food freedom through fueling your body with the right types of foods for the right reasons at the right times, rather than starving yourself by implementing fasting without really taking into consideration what types of foods you're eating and how much. You're starving yourself when you break your fast. You eat too much. You're over consuming during that eating window, which is, also not a good thing. So the overall takeaway here is, this is why we track macros, and why I think it's so important that if you are implementing fasting in your life now, that you really consider tracking your macros using MyFitnessPal, figuring out how much you're consuming during your eating window. And not only that, let's take it to a step further. And the next thing I see, mistake I see people make, is they just don't take into consideration what types of foods they're eating, period. They're eating, they're using fasting as an excuse to just kind of eat whatever they want, instead of focusing on whole food nutrition, fueling our bodies with good whole foods. So again, you could be completely under eating. You could be severely under eating, restricting your calories, which in combination with fasting is going to wreck your metabolism and your hormones. You could also be, really under your protein goal, which is so important in revving up your metabolism and being able to lay down new lean muscle. You could be way over your carbohydrate intake, which we'll talk about here in a second as well. So really focusing on what types of foods you're eating, focusing on a whole foods based diet 80% of the time, and learning how to use some kind of tracking to see how much you're intaking and to track your macronutrients, which is proteins, carbs, and fats, right? So over exercising is the next mistake I see people make when they're fasting. So people start fasting, or they start doing some kind of program, and they get to feeling so good. So they're fasting and they feel amazing. They have great energy, and they start implementing exercise because they feel so good, and they're like, well, I need to do more. I'm going to start training for a marathon now. I'm going to do some additional classes at the gym. I'm going to be, doing all these things in addition to what the exercise plan that maybe we have given them, for instance. And that puts a lot of additional and unnecessary stress on your body because you are restricting your intake in addition to over exercising, which causes additional stress. So you are going to run yourself out of hormones, basically. Not eating enough, not tracking to see what you are consuming, and then extreme exercise, all of that, plus the additional stressors that we all have in our lives right now, just due to all of the life circumstances that we are facing at this time. That is going to increase your cortisol levels. You could be looking at adrenal fatigue. You're going to hold on to store body fat instead of burn body fat. So the combination of those two things don't work well together, okay? It's going to actually, like I said in the beginning here, it can have opposite effects as what you are hoping to see. So opposite of what your goals are. You could start storing and holding on to fat instead of losing fat. Okay, next thing is pairing intermittent fasting with an extreme low carb lifestyle, or your extreme high carb diet even. So there's an either or here. I don't recommend either one of those strategies. And what I hope for you guys is that you will learn how to manage your carbohydrate intake, both in fueling your body with the right types of carbohydrates, but managing the amount of carbohydrates you are consuming on a daily basis. So if you are doing an extreme low carb diet, that alone can have really, if you do it for a longer period of time, okay, there are people who could benefit from a low carb lifestyle. And you work with your doctor and you figure that out. But for the general population, for women especially, long term, doing that low carb lifestyle in addition to intermittent fasting can cause suboptimal thyroid function, again, adrenal fatigue. You might feel really, really good for the first couple of weeks, and then it starts to catch up with you. You might have great energy. You're going to lose a ton of weight really fast, but then you hit a wall, and then you realize it's not sustainable. Fasting on top of that is just going to make it worse, okay? Fasting in itself is a stressor, and again, you don't want to add any additional stress, any additional unnecessary stress to your life right now that would cause any kind of damage to your hormones or your metabolism. Now, on the flip side, fasting helps to manage your insulin levels, which is our fat storing hormone. So if you are over consuming carbohydrates, meaning, like I said, you're not tracking, you're just eating whatever during your eating window, you have no real clear plan on how much to eat or how much of each macro to eat. You're over consuming carbohydrates, which most Americans do, especially if you have a highly processed diet. Your insulin level goes up. It's going to be high, and you're going to be hungrier than ever. Okay, so even though You're eating until you're full during your eating window. If you are consuming, over consuming carbohydrates, that's what most of your food is coming from, then you're probably eating less protein. You're eating less fat. You're not getting enough of those essential macronutrients. And what protein and fat do is they actually slow the release of carbs into your body. So it's like they act as a buffer for carbohydrate intake. So you don't have that spike or fall, that rapid spike and fall in your blood sugar, blood glucose levels, and therefore you're not going to be hungry every couple of hours. So ideally, you want to manage your carbohydrate intake. You don't want to be extremely low. You don't want to be extremely high. You want to be right there in the middle, and you want to have a well-balanced, well-rounded diet with carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, because we need all three macronutrients, which is a whole nother topic, and we can discuss that at another date if you want. But pairing anything extreme like low carb or going bonkers on carbohydrates with fasting can have a negative impact. Okay, couple more things. One thing I see is people aren't flexible. They're not being flexible with their fasting and eating windows, and you know that flexible is key, is a key component of creating a sustainable lifestyle. So instead of becoming so rigid in your fasting window, I can't do this because I have to fast 16 hours. I can't go out to eat late because that's going to mess up my fasting window. That instead of being that rigid and letting fasting rule your life, you need to be flexible and be okay with, having an extended eating window one day and maybe a shorter fasting window, that kind of thing. It's okay to not be rigid in your fasting schedule. And what I would rather you do is have a healthy relationship with food, and also a healthy relationship with being consistent and being able to go enjoy your life and do the things that you want without feeling restricted or feeling like it doesn't fit your plan. Okay. Last thing is not getting enough sleep. Now, how does this even impact or have anything to do with fasting? If you don't get enough sleep, your body never recovers. It will never fully recover from the day before. So sleep is like the missing ingredient for so many people in their weight loss or wellness goals. People just don't understand how much that impacts your ability to lose fat, burn fat. So your body never recovers from that day before when you don't get enough sleep. It increases your cortisol and it increases your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, right? So you've learned that before or earlier. So the next day you have increased hunger hormone because your body is trying to compensate for the fact that it didn't get to repair itself during your sleep. You didn't get enough time to recover. So then it's trying to get more energy from food instead. So it makes it really hard for you guys to get through your fasting window when you're not sleeping well because that hunger hormone is high. Okay. So again, all of this is not to scare you. It's not to say you should not be fasting. I just want you to be aware that you really need to have a clear plan and a purpose when it comes to your fasting protocol. Why have you done your research? Why are you doing this? Have you consulted your doctor before you started this? Do you know how to fast properly? So I think after today, you will know how to fast properly, and you can implement that strategy if you would like to. But I recommend not doing this on your own for a long period of time without having that clear plan and purpose and guidance, and without tracking your macros. It's so important that you are eating enough, fueling your body with the right amounts of foods, the right types of foods, trumps fasting always, in my opinion. Okay, so that's a little bit about what not to do while fasting. I hope you guys learned a lot today. Thank you for joining me. I will be back next Wednesday at noon again for another Lunch and Learn. If you guys found this information valuable, please feel free to hit the share button. Share it with your friends and family so they can learn a little bit of something today too. And always, if you have any questions, if you would like to learn more about working with me, you can visit my website. It's www.lorenmattingly.com, or please feel free to reach out to me in a DM. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will chat soon. Bye.